Hi, I'm Benton Stokes.
And I'm Elane O'Rourke.
And this is Cocktail Theology.
I have prepared a cocktail.
You have?
Yes.
Well, what is it?
It doesn't have a name yet.
Okay.
Do you trust me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's try it, and then I'll tell you what's in it.
All right. Oh, wow.
Do we like it?
I do. There's cilantro.
There is cilantro.
Okay, so it's lemon. I taste the lemon, too.
Mm-hmm. There's limoncello, and there's also fresh squeezed Meyer lemon.
Nice.
And then Tanqueray.
Well, it's lovely.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I was pretending it was summer for just a moment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the effort.
That is about as much summer as you're going to get, my friend, because it is pretty gray and dreary.
It is. That's okay.
So, we are talking about trust today.
We are talking about trust today.
You saw the lead in. You saw, I did not bury the lead.
You did not bury the lead. No, you did not.
We're talking about trust today, and I find trust fascinating.
Yeah.
So we've talked before about how another word for faith is trust.
Right.
And that a lot of times when we're thinking about faith, a better word to use in order to understand it is trust.
Right.
Which then led me to think about, well, what's trust?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I can give a basic definition for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a certain kind of assurance that something will happen that you expect to happen.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right?
Something like that.
But I'm not sure what personally who I actually trust, because I trust different people for different things and different things for different things.
Okay.
So I thought it might be kind of fun to just talk about, well, what do we trust? So on the back of the dollar, is it on the back of the dollar bill or the front of the dollar bill? In God we trust.
I'm not sure. It's on there somewhere though.
Yeah. I mean, and it is really in the Federal Reserve we trust. I mean, that's what the dollar bill thing is.
Right.
But it did make me wonder. So what about trust?
What about trust?
Yeah. So if I asked you flat out, in blank you trust.
In gravity, I trust.
Ooh. Okay. Like you feel confident that gravity is and will have an effect.
Gravity will Gravity will always have an effect as long as I'm on Earth.
Okay. All right. But gravity will continue to have an effect whether you're on Earth or not. It just won't have an effect on you.
Right. I will just be experiencing it while I'm on Earth. Yeah.
Okay. So in gravity, you trust. What else? Maybe we could get a little less physical laws. Right?
Yeah. Wow. I do think I trust God, but I know sometimes my behavior or my choices probably don't necessarily prove that.
Okay. So if you say, and then I promise I'll share too, if you say, I trust God, maybe there are, I trust God with, I trust God about, I trust God, is there some kind of qualifier? Because, for example, if you said, I trust God to drop a new refrigerator on my lawn in the next 24 minutes, I would kind of cock my eyebrow at you and tilt my head and go, really? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't.
Right, so.
Yeah, I would not trust God to drop a refrigerator on the lawn.
Wait, is that a truck I hear back?
I trust God to, in the biggest sense, take care of me. And when I say that, I mean based on, and again, I guess trust here, I'm basing this not only on what I perceive or believe about God, but also my experience through the course of my life.
That's right.
That God has always provided for me.
Yes.
Now, it has not always been easy. Sometimes I've had to work 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've had to ask for help. But God has always provided what I've needed.
Okay.
Not necessarily everything I've wanted.
Okay.
It's not necessarily come to me the way that I would have preferred. But God has provided. So I trust God for provision in that sense.
Okay.
And with that, I also trust God to ultimately take care of me. Now, that doesn't mean that, my health is always going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to feel great.
Right.
No, it doesn't mean things are always going to go my way. But ultimately, I believe that God will take care of me in this life and into whatever happens after.
Okay. So this is based on experience and probably some sort of intellectual interaction with that experience.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I don't expect God to, for instance, give me a winning lottery number.
Okay.
Okay.
Suppose you prayed really, really hard.
I still don't expect God to give me a winning lottery number. I just don't think God works like that.
Okay.
I also, my dad has been sick. And while I am praying that God will heal my dad, I also understand that God may choose not to in this life, heal his physical body.
Okay.
So while I can trust God will take care of Dad the same way God takes care of me, I can't trust that God will do what I'm asking God to do because that's what I want. God has God's own purposes, and I trust that his purposes are bigger than mine. You know what I mean?
And maybe better.
And better than mine, right?
Right. You use the word expect. I think that's an interesting word to use with trust and to use with belief, because we've said before that a belief is an idea on which you are willing to act.
Yes.
Right? Or on which you automatically act.
Right.
Even if you don't know that you believe something.
Right.
Okay. So that notion of expectation has some of that to it, right? You said you don't expect that God will heal your dad's physical body. But you trust that God will care for him in whatever that means.
Yes.
Okay. And that expectation versus trust, do you feel like there's a distinction there? I'm trying to figure that out. I'm just playing with this right now.
I think if you trust someone, it is fair to expect.
Okay.
So if I trust that you're going to pick me up after work because you said you would pick me up after work, it's fair for me to expect that you're going to show up and pick me up after work.
Okay, that makes sense.
See, so that's kind of my logic, I think.
Yep.
In the way that I'm using the word expect.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that actually goes with the faith idea in the Bible, right? Where faith is the evidence of things hoped for and so forth, right? So that sense of expectation. I like that. Okay. So think about a human person, okay? You trust in some way. Doesn't matter who it is.
Okay.
That single person, in what ways do you trust that person? What do you trust that person to do, be, blah, blah, blah?
Right now I'm thinking about my oldest son, Zach. And this is probably just because I'm also thinking about my dad.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about if there were something that I wanted to make sure was carried out after I leave this earth. He is a person I could trust to do that.
Okay.
I could say, after I'm gone, these are the things I would like to happen, I would like everyone to eat chocolate ice cream. I would like everyone to sing my favorite song. I would like, and I could give him a list of things. And he would make sure, move heaven and earth to make sure that those things were done. I know that.
Okay. That's a great one, right? That's a great one. So that is something, and it says a lot about Zach and about your relationship with Zach, without getting into details of who either of you are exactly.
Right.
But you know that if you gave Zach an important duty that regarded you and you had no way of interfering in it, he would make sure it got carried out.
He would make sure.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So I think that one of the biggest acts of trust we do on a daily basis is make a left turn.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
Every time I make a left turn, I am conscious that it is an act of trust. Right? And as I've gotten older, I have been less trusting of other drivers than I was before. And part of that's because I had this horrible accident when I was 17, completely my fault. And because it involved my running into a semi with the semi on the right and me on the left, When there's a big vehicle next to me on my right, I do not trust it is not coming into my lane. I have to actively walk myself through, okay, there is no reason for that big vehicle to come into your lane right now. You're okay. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? So I don't trust that at all.
Yeah.
Left turns, on the other hand, if I don't see anybody, basically I trust that I'm not going to get hit. But if I saw somebody continuing to come, I might hold off on that left turn.
Definitely.
Well, but isn't that funny? Because I'm not trusting that other person to also desire to not get into an accident.
Right. And I wonder too, I mean, I think these days I'm noticing that I'm in general less trusting of people, like people I don't know specifically.
Okay.
Whether they're, behind the wheel of a car or in the voting booth.
Okay.
Or next to me at church. Like, I'm not trusting that we are on the same page, that we all agree that traffic laws are traffic laws to be followed, that they aren't just suggestions.
Okay.
Or, that your vision for what's going on in our country and mine aren't the same.
Right.
Those kinds of things, I'm not trusting, I think, that people are as trustworthy as I used to think they were.
Isn't that interesting?
Which plays into your left turn thing.
Yes.
Because it's like, you don't know that the other person's not going to just gun it and plow right into you.
That's right.
If they're just having a really crappy day.
That's right. Trust is decimated when repeatedly people show that they do not consider a particular thing the same way you do.
Right.
Right? Let's stay on the left turn for a minute.
Okay.
Drivers have been significantly and measurably less courteous, less ceding of space since the pandemic than they were before.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And we've observed that in other places we've been.
Yes.
Speaking for myself, I have lost some trust that drivers will behave not even nicely, but consistently.
Yes.
Right? So if somebody's driving 90 miles an hour on a freeway that's really, really crowded and swerving in and out and swerving in and out, in some ways, if they keep doing that, I know what to expect.
Right. They're erratic.
I know they're erratic. I know they're going to go for wherever they can see a gap. My job is to leave them as much gap as possible.
Right.
And to not be erratic.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I can trust that. What I don't trust is that the person next to me, when they move into my lane, is going to pay any attention to whether I'm there or not.
Right.
And it's because it's not dependable. There's something about trust that is about your being able to depend on something consistently.
Yes. That's
right?
a huge part of it. Yes.
Okay. So there's a consistency aspect to trust as well. I'm trying to think about things that we trust will happen when we've never done them before, experienced them before. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I have a problem with vertigo, and it's under control right now, but it takes effort to make it under control. And I'm afraid of heights. So if we were coming up to a suspension bridge over a chasm, it would take a lot for me to do that because I have not done it before. And so I don't trust that it will be fine. Now, I'm not saying that once we walked across it, if we gathered up our courage and walked across it, or I watched 500 people cross it, I'm not saying it would be easy for me to do it, but it would be just a shade better. I won't picture all of the Indiana Jones movies, right? Or whatever the thing is. So there's something about predictability and experience that gains trust.
Definitely.
Right?
For me, I think about roller coasters.
Yes.
So a lot of people are terrified of roller coasters.
Right.
And I think I have ridden so many roller coasters, and I trust the engineers that design roller coasters and the engineers that build and construct roller coasters to the point where There are roller coasters I won't ride just because I don't like some of their features. Like, for instance, if it's going to spin me around, I don't like that. Or if it's going to drop me, like vertical, like take me up and drop me.
We don't do that. We don't do those Tower of Fear things. No. Mm-mm.
But I can remember the first time that I rode Millennium Force, and anybody that's been listening for any amount of time knows this is my favorite coaster in the world, 310 feet straight up. Uh-huh. So I'm not going to say that I wasn't a little terrified the first time I rode it. But I had a sense, because of my experience with roller coasters in controlled environments, that it was going to be okay.
Yes.
And so even though my heart's racing, I'm getting a little sweaty, at the same time I'm like, this is really cool. Oh, I'm terrified. Oh, this is really cool. And then you get to the top, right. and you start down that 90-degree drop, 300 feet. And it's just so exhilarating. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. And so because I've had enough experiences like that with roller coasters. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go to like the carnival they threw up last night and ride anything. Because no. But these coasters that they've spent $1 billion putting in the ground and anchoring to the ground and understanding that theme parks have liabilities. Okay. So I trust that it's all going to be okay. Are there mishaps? Absolutely.
Sure.
But generally speaking, I trust that it's going to be okay. And I know that there's a new coaster. It's a revamp of an old coaster. And I know that I will be first in line to ride it.
Right.
Even though I've never ridden it before.
Right.
Because I trust that it's going to be okay. And I trust that it's going to be an amazing time.
So notice how many things you have to trust in order to trust that roller coaster.
Right? Yeah, and I know it's a lot.
But I mean, this is how trust works.
Yeah.
I'm pointing to this is how trust works,
yep.
right? So you are trusting engineers who design these things. Mm-hmm. You are trusting that the company that owns the roller coaster values profit over liability, right? Like they're not willing to risk the profit.
Definitely not.
Right? So there's, that's not a good way to phrase it, but you know what I mean. So there's something about trusting that company to be greedy enough to not hurt you.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's,
they're in the business of giving people a good time. That's and if somebody gets hurt on a roller coaster, nobody's having a good time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So when you're trusting something like that, that's completely out of your control once you hand it over.
Yeah.
There's this whole sequence of trust that has to happen.
Well, it's not unlike getting on an airplane.
Say more about that, listeners. If you need to cover your ears to avoid being triggered, now is the time.
Because if you're afraid of flying, what is it going to take to get you on an airplane if you're really afraid of flying? Because you have to trust that the airplane's going to work. You have to trust that the pilot knows what he or she is doing. You have to trust that the physics aren't going to fail. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that you have to trust to get on an airplane. It's similar to getting on a roller coaster. That's right. People think a roller coaster is more risky, but I kind of think an airplane is probably more risky. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to actually look at the numbers on that.
Yeah.
But yes, so there's this whole package of trust that goes into those things.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm going to think about you for a minute, okay? And I'm going to speak out loud about the things I trust you on.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not going to go into all of them. So you're fine. And I'm not going to shock anybody. But for example, if I ask you to do something for me, I trust you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. I feel pretty confident about that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I asked you, I'm going to make up something. If I asked you to go to the store to buy a loaf of bread and they were out of bread, you would let me know if they were out of bread. And ask me if there was something else that could be done.
Sure.
Right? So there's something about that package of things, right? Where I know that you are A, trustworthy, you tend to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And B, you're resourceful enough to go, maybe there's another option.
Right.
And C, you're communicative enough to check with me if I asked for a particular loaf of bread, whether there was an option.
Right.
So it's a package of trust.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we go back to God for a minute and we think about, okay, what do we trust God for? I believe that the physical laws were put in motion by God. Part of the reason there's gravity is because God's perfectly happy with gravity. Mm-hmm. Works for God. Mm-hmm. When I trust gravity, if I sit and think about it very long, I'll go from gravity to the physical laws that predict gravity. And as I go on a regression, eventually I get to God.
Yeah.
Okay? But I have to trust all those things to get to gravity. Right? Mm-hmm. And somewhere in between, ready for this? Grace and gravity, Yes, you're welcome. That's the name of one of his albums. It is my favorite album, but that's fine. Somewhere between Grace and Gravity is all of these levels of trust that I have experienced and know happen, and it's all good.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
The problem with the refrigerator landing on the front yard is I have never experienced a refrigerator surprisingly landing on the front yard.
No.
We are not praying for a refrigerator.
No.
I don't tend to believe that God hands us physical objects because we ask for them.
Exactly right.
Now, I do believe that there are times when people are absolutely desperate for money, rescue, something like that, and God says, okay.
God provides a way.
God provides a way. But it's usually a way.
You're right.
Not
and it's
the
usually
thing.
dependent on us.
That's right.
Being the way.
That's right. And dependent upon the person recognizing that there is a way.
Yeah.
Not being so stuck on a manna refrigerator. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that if another refrigerator lands, they don't go... Anyway. So I guess what I'm bringing up in all of this is we throw around trust, the language of trust, in some ways both really casually and take it far too seriously.
Right. Yeah, I see that.
Right? Mm-hmm. But it is every time we say we trust or every time we say we don't trust, there's a package of emotions and experiences that goes into that. Mm-hmm. So if I were to say I don't trust Fred, okay, then the question would be, why don't I trust Fred? And kind of getting to the moral piece of this, I believe that if I don't trust a person with whom I have little experience, it is incumbent upon me to try and tease that out. Yeah. Not try to convince myself it's right. And go, okay, so I'm looking for prejudices I have.
Right.
Fred wears $400 shoes. Fred didn't tip the waiter properly. Whatever the thing is, right? But it's incumbent upon me to say, why don't I trust this person? And try to be as open as possible so that either I recognize, as best I can, recognize my own biases or justify my being wary about the person, not entrusting them with something that really, really matters, like your desires for what happens after you die.
Yeah.
And you trust your son because you have experience of his being trustworthy.
Right. Listeners, talk to us about trust. We would love to hear from you. Cocktailtheology.com is where we are. Who do you trust? Who don't you trust? And why? Have you thought about this? What does trust mean to you? And what does it mean to trust God? That's a whole nother episode.
That's right. That's right.
But what does it mean for you to trust God?
And do you trust us?
And do you trust us?
I mean, that actually would be a really interesting thing for you to tell us, is what you would trust us with and what you wouldn't.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
We would love to hear from you. Please, cocktailtheology.com. We have new episodes, a few more coming out this season every Thursday. And wherever you are, do us a favor, follow or subscribe, please, because it helps other people find us.
Yes.
We appreciate that very much. I'm going to enjoy more of this cilantro lemon, whatever this is going to be called, because it's very tasty. But we appreciate you all.
Very much.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.